for me, the biggest game changer has definitely been the BMX 96 for several reasons. First of all, it really offers a lot of support, which is very helpful when you have complicated stroke cases where access is an issue. Additionally, it tracks really well and it helps with tortuosity, for example. But on top of that, the inner diameter is also an 096, which is the largest inner diameter of all the guiding catheters. And that allows you, for example, to go up with bigger aspiration catheters, like for example, the 078, which has just been launched. So there is several things to it that actually really allows you to have major benefits, and that's a big game changer. And finally, it really allows you to go really high into that ICA, the Peters ICA, without really being traumatic. So that gives you, again, a lot of support to perform a thrombectomy procedure. So I would say the BMX 96 is definitely for me the one. I would say, like, using SENDit, the first thing is that it's very easy to prep. Right, so just an easy flush, it all comes pre-packaged, and you just have to put in an 014 wire and you're good to go. And we all know in stroke, time is brain, so having to prep a separate microcatheter and then bring it into the aspiration catheter, those are additional time that you could use doing other stuff. So on top of that, I think it's also a very useful tool, especially for the ophthalmic artery, where you really have that ledge effect. Even using a combination of other aspiration catheters and microcatheters, you always have that ledge. That ledge disappears using the SENDit, so it tracks really nicely past your ophthalmic artery, and that's really the main thing where a lot of people get stuck when they're doing aspiration and having to default to using a stent. Having a tool like SENDit is actually also again another game changer aside from the BMX 96. What I like about Penumbra portfolio is that for every different aspect of a stroke case, you can pivot. You have a difficult arch, you can use a SIM catheter, a SIM select, you can use a BMX 96, which offers you 4 times more support compared to a NeuroMax. You can go pretty high into the ICA. You can look at the vessels, you can determine, do I think this is a large clot or large vessel? You can change your sizing to that. So you basically have such a wide range of choices in your aspiration catheter that there is for every case. You can really almost handpick the right tools to really increase your first pass success. So I believe less and less people are starting to use balloon guides because people are starting to understand better the true physics from aspiration. So before, people just thought of aspiration as something as a pull effect of the pump, but now they understand that it's actually much more than that. The systolic pressure that you have also really helps pushing in the clot. And we published on this on CanAdapt, which is basically a technique that really standardizes but also optimizes your first pass effect with aspiration. And it really uses that concept of both the pull of the pump and the push of the systolic pressure. And what you're doing when you have your balloon guide, you're taking away your systolic pressure. You're basically taking away a big advantage of your aspiration by inflating your balloon, and it really affects your first pass effect negatively. So you really don't want to do that, and if you want to be successful. I think it's very important to have an idea about the right size for the vessel in terms of which size of aspiration catheter to use. I always like to say one size does not fit all. You want to be around that 70–80% range, and what it does, it actually allows you systolic blood pressure to still go around and beyond the clot, and when you pull back, you actually are going to increase your first pass effect. Imagine now having a catheter that's too large for the vessel. First of all, you're occlusive, and again, you don't get that benefit of having systolic pressure. But on top of that, you run the risk of causing damage to the vessel, like spasm, and that's something that also might negatively affect your outcome. So right sizing is very important, and this again is something that's new to people. And it may be important to mention too is that every vessel is different in everyone, right? Somebody's M1 versus somebody else's M1 may have a different size. So you can't really say, I use this aspiration catheter for that vessel. You really have to kind of tailor it. Now, personally, for example, the 078 is one of those new catheters, which is probably the biggest one in the portfolio of Penumbra. But I personally, I'm not opposed to using it, but then use it, for example, in a carotid T or in a big basilar. But if your M1 is small, don't push it in there, because actually you will cause harm in the patient. So I think I will be definitely the modulated aspiration. I know Penumbra has worked very hard on this and is actually a pioneer in that field. So what will happen is that the clot actually can be ingested into the aspiration catheter at the moment when the aspiration catheter is at the level of the clot. From the data from Canada, we actually found that there is only a small percentage of clots that are actually ingested at this point, mainly because that systolic blood pressure is so minimal in this phase. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with the new Thunderbolt technology from Penumbra, and I really believe that's going to be another big game changer for sure.